Hey there. I have had education on my mind a lot lately, not only because it is my children's last full week of school, but also because of a couple of events I attended this week. So the first was the senior thesis panel at my children's school, at which all of the seniors do a presentation on a topic that they select at the beginning of the year, spend the year researching, and then write a very in-depth and well-researched paper that's usually about 15 to 20 pages. Each of the seniors has to give a 20-minute presentation of their paper, and then a panelist of 3 adults from the school community get to ask them questions. And I was very honored this year to be asked again to participate as one of the 3 panelists. And then we have 10 minutes to ask them any questions that we want regarding their paper, whether it's helping them clarify points or whether it's trying to poke holes in their arguments, and just whatever we think might help draw out their thinking on the subject matter and to encourage them to perhaps consider points they hadn't considered before. And also just to praise them for their hard work and for the many, many excellent points that they made. And the topics this year were fascinating and very diverse. There was a paper about NIL, name, image, likeness in college sports. There was a paper about IVF. There was a paper about Christians and horror movies. There was a paper about charismatic gifts. And of course, I'm forgetting one of the topics, and I apologize to that student for forgetting the topic of their paper. However, they all were just very wonderfully presented. And I personally just learned so much from reading the papers and also just having an opportunity to hear the other panelists' questions and to hear the students' responses to those. And the thing about these presentations that always really impresses me, not only how well researched and put together the papers are, but just also how poised the students are, not only in the presentation of their papers. I remember the other topic was AI. How could I forget? One of my favorite hot topics in the publishing industry, AI. And so they are not only so poised in the presentation of their papers, but also just so good at thinking on their feet when we panelists ask them questions. And I promise you, we do not go easy on them. We ask them really hard questions. And I appreciate that they often also are just willing to admit, I didn't really research that, or I'm not exactly sure. But even if they don't have an answer off the top of their head, they're still willing to engage with the ideas contained within those questions. And the ability to think on your feet is so critical in this day and age. And I appreciate seeing the fruit of all of the labor that the teachers and the parents and the students themselves have done over the course of their education at my children's school. It's something that's really cool and really beautiful to see. So that was the first thing that happened. And then today I was at a Lunch and Learn event here in Nashville with the actress Sam Sorbo, who is Kevin Sorbo's wife, who is a very staunch and vocal advocate for homeschooling. And obviously, education is a whole conversation when you have children, but I feel, especially in our country right now, why and how we educate our children is very personal, and it could also be a very sensitive topic and a very emotional topic. And I know for my part, I was educated in public schools, K through 12. And in hindsight, I realized that I did receive a very excellent and very robust and deep education in my public school, and I'm very grateful for that. I also recognize that public school has changed a lot, obviously, over the past, golly, am I going to age myself here? 30 years. Oh, yeah, I guess actually this year would be my 30th high school reunion. Oh my goodness. Okay, sorry, I'm just having a moment here about that. So I just think that public school has changed a lot. And when we initially were going to have children, I thought, well, homeschooling, of course, absolutely makes sense. Who can educate our children better than we can? And then after we had children, I thought, oh, maybe it's better if the children go to school. And that was not a reflection on them at all. That was completely a reflection on me in my insecurities and my perceived shortcomings about my ability to educate our children. And we made a decision to send our children to a private classical Christian school that was one of the best decisions I think we've made as parents for our children. And we have seen them thrive in that environment and be very nourished in every sense, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And we are very grateful for their school. But the conversation today around homeschooling, I have to admit, it's sort of, I don't know. I don't really know how to articulate it, but I guess the best way of saying it is that it did stir something up in me and got me thinking about homeschooling again, which I actually haven't done for some time, although we do periodically talk about the possibility of doing it in the event that our school is no longer a good fit for our family and our priorities. And so we reassess that every year and just how things are going at the school. But homeschooling has never been 100% off the table. I guess that's the best way of saying it. And so just after hearing Sam's passion and her arguments for homeschooling, it, like I said, it just stirred something up in me. And I'm not saying I'm going to start homeschooling my children next school year, but I am thinking more in the future about continuing the conversation. I am committed to continuing to have the conversation about homeschooling and whether or not that could be a viable option for our family. And obviously, there's a lot of things about it that are very appealing to me. Other things that I know that I personally would find very challenging. However, I think it really comes down to trusting God and trusting His leading and just to continue to pray for wisdom and discernment. Because the one thing I will say is that in our country and where we live here, we are just so blessed to have so many options for where and how we educate our children. And I am exceedingly grateful for that. When I was growing up, there were, where I lived at least, there were no options. No one homeschooled, like no one homeschooled. That was not a thing where I lived when I was growing up. There was one very tiny private Christian school, and that was it. And yeah, homeschooling was definitely not something anyone had heard of or knew about. And I feel fairly certain it would have been very frowned upon or thought of as very weird and fringe. And just a reminder, I grew up in New York State. So that definitely there was not something people were doing back in the 80s and 90s. So I just want to impress upon all the moms, all the parents, all of those who are influencing young people in their lives that we all are responsible for educating children, especially in the fear and the love of the Lord. As far as more formal education goes in a school, I just encourage everyone to continue and to keep in prayer. As far as where and how we educate our children, I just encourage everyone to continue to stay in prayer about that. And, as I'm doing in my family, just seek the Lord's wisdom, seek His guidance, ask Him to help you know what is best for your children at any point in time. And whatever that path looks like, just to step onto it with trust and with faith that your children are safely in His grasp, and that if you are seeking His face, that He will guide you down the paths that will help your children continue to grow and develop into the men and women that He created them to be. This video ended up being a lot longer than I thought. I have so much more I could say about this topic, but I'm trying to keep my videos less than 10 minutes. So, or under 10 minutes, my grammarian self is unhappy. I'm not sure what the proper preposition is there. I will end this video here, and I pray the Lord's blessings on each and every one of you this day and always.